All right. Welcome and thank you to everyone who joined us for this event today. I want to say good afternoon to plenty of you, but I'm also conscious there may be people here. Priya, I'm looking at you. It might be good evening and even a good morning to some of you. But thanks again, everybody, for joining us. With today's session is going to be a hot button topic. With the climate crisis as pressing and as prevalent as it is today, the debate on nuclear energy finds itself in the spotlight more so than ever. With the recent calling for the accelerated phase out of coal and reaching net zero by the middle of the century, many question whether this would be achievable without nuclear power. And yet, there are still many who are opposed to nuclear power, let alone the emphasis on nuclear in a bid to replace fossil fuels. Those in opposition, many of whom can attest to lived experiences, threats to the environment and people, and the overall safety of the use of nuclear energy. My name is Ray Oma, and I'm joined today by my lovely colleagues Siti Amina, Tina Sai, and Farhana Yaqub. And to navigate today's important discussion, we have with us a distinguished panel of alumni, each coming with a wealth of expertise and their own unique perspective. But before I introduce them, allow me to give a very brief background of how we came to today's session. So like many, in 2021 was the year we went full steam ahead in putting together a fully virtual reunion. And an outcome from that reunion weekend was the desire to create an alumni group dedicated to issues of sustainability. We have two of those alumni who are now our co-leads of the sustainability group, Sri Priya and Hanna, who played significant roles in setting up this initiative and growing this group following the launch back in April. Today's session will mark the group's third virtual gathering, and I'd also like to add that the topic and the keynote speaker today was very much inspired by the interaction we had in the last session, which just goes to show the organic nature of how these conversations can happen within our community. And who knows, an outcome from today's sharing could very well spark off the topic for the next. Okay, so the program for today will start off with our alumni keynote speaker, Ralph Dixon, from the class of 1982. He will help us set the scene with today's topic. Hanna will then take us through with an interactive segment, followed by Sri Priya, who will cover some key topics and also be addressing questions submitted by some of you in attendance. Today's conversation can continue on Sustainability Group on UWCS Connect, so please join if you haven't already done so. My colleague Siti will be sharing the link in the chat. Okay, I know we're over 2 years into the pandemic. Everyone should be very well versed with Zoom etiquette, but just give me a few seconds to go through a few housekeeping items. Today's session will take on a Zoom meeting format, so it allows audience to engage with our speakers later on in the program. Until that time, could we please keep your mics on mute so that we can all enjoy this sharing by the speakers, but keep your camera on if possible, as it's always nice to see faces on the call. I'm also sure you've noted upon entry that the event is being recorded, just so that we can share this event with those who are not able to join us at this time. And my final time of saying this to alumni in the audience, if you'd be so kind to change your screen name to include your grad year, that will help us and identify you better and when you were at the college. So our intent for the session today is to be as interactive as possible. So if at any time during the sharing, please feel free to drop your questions or comments in the chat box. And with that, I'm done talking, I promise you. Without further ado, I'd now like to turn things over to Sri Priya and Hanna, our co-leads for the Alumni in Sustainability Group. All right, over to you guys.
All right. Thank you so much, Ray. It's wonderful to be here again. I can't believe this is already our third time. So like Ray mentioned, so we started setting up this sustainability group together in the past year. And definitely the reunion last year, that was where we started. And so basically, Sri Priya and I, we were very happy to be co-leading this group because we know that sustainability, it's a huge topic or huge concern in the UWC. Many alumni, many students are really passionate about this, including us too. So we were very happy when the alumni team approached us to co-lead this. And so what we want with this group is basically, to connect, for this to be a network, for you all to connect over and learn from each other regarding sustainability, because we know, like, we all have such amazing, like, it's just we have such a good resource just simply by having this network. So that's why yeah, I guess I can just introduce myself, and through Priya I can talk more about today's session. So yeah, so I'm Hanna Sundahl. I'm from the graduate class 2011. I didn't graduate from UWC, but I definitely was really impacted by the UWC education, and ever since my first Green Week in 4th grade. So my passion, the direction in life has been was set at UWC. So I graduated with a bachelor's in biological sciences from University of Oxford. And then I did a master's in marine biology from University of Bergen. And I'm now starting a career as an environmental consultant at a local Singaporean environmental consulting company. So I'm very excited to hopefully have a positive impact on the environment here. But I will be moving to Jakarta soon, so I hope I can meet some alumni there as well. Next up, Sri Priya, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Hannah. Your passion for sustainability just comes through so brightly, and I've learned so much from you. I want to thank Ray for pulling this event together. She's done an excellent job along with Citi and our other UWC alumni staff. So as Ray was mentioning, we really have a wonderful international community, and in order to solve the energy problems, I think that all of us are going to need to bring different perspectives to understand how we can solve these problems. I'm class of 1995, and I've always had a very strong interest in physics, and I have to thank Andy Coburn for that. And so when the topic came up in our last session, and Ralph Dixon, who is class of 1982, was mentioning that for an island nation like Singapore, nuclear might be part of the equation. We both were like, wow, we want to find out more. Please tell us more. And so that was kind of the nucleus for pun intended, for today's session. So I'm currently based in California, and even in the US, there's a lot of debate going around how can we make the energy mix cleaner, and nuclear is thought to be part of the solution in the US as well. So I'm really excited to hear from Ralph. Ralph is the Director of Environmental Investments at YTL Corporation Berhad and CEO of YTL's carbon consulting subsidiary, YTL-SV Carbon. He has been with YTL for 15 years, managing the environmental, investment, carbon strategy, and sustainability divisions for the group. Without further ado, over to you, Ralph.
Thanks so much, Ray, Hannah, and Priya. We did stumble across this a little bit by accident, as Priya said. So we were just toying with different topics that could interest people. Now I feel like a bit of a dinosaur here, next to Ethan, who's what year? 2022. So I was listening to the radio yesterday, and the Stylistics came on. Shame on you if you don't know who the Stylistics are, but they were big in the 1970s. And there was a song that came on, and it really took me straight back into Limhouse in 1977. It was just amazing, a coincidence, because Do the Hustle and some of the Stylistic songs are, it's amazing how music takes you back. So yes, I'm a dinosaur in the room, I'm afraid. I'm not an engineer, so I have to caveat a little bit. I'm from a finance background. Also, I'd just like to caveat a little bit on, these are the views of my personal views and not the views of YTL. We currently don't have any ongoing work in the nuclear space. So just to share that with you, that this really arose from our personal discussions as alumni of the school. So next slide, please. We're gonna rush through sort of a little bit of these, because not all of these, this is just setting the scene and trying to get a little bit of context on the topic so that we have a little bit of framework to work around in terms of stimulating discussion, passion even, please raise your hand or, join in if you have a comment and you want to say something, because that's the whole point of this, to be interactive. And so there's a lot of topics to cover here, but don't worry, I'm not going to kill you, or what to say, death by PowerPoint. Next slide, please. So just looking through, we all understand that, nuclear is probably predominantly in our minds, or that of public perception, is that as a weapon. Some for nuclear power, for power generation, good baseload energy, power generation. But of course, there are other applications, a number of submarines around the world, as well as aircraft carriers, icebreakers, and of course, in the medical field, nuclear is used extensively as a means to power equipment, to conduct certain types of cancer treatment. So it's a very important part of our lives and much more present than a lot of us realize. But certainly the three that I put here in terms of agriculture, nuclear medicine, space exploration, they're probably slightly off the radar in terms of public perception. Next slide. And so our understanding is that picture in the bottom left-hand corner, those vast cooling towers. Those are what represent nuclear. And in fact, in the background of Priya and Hanna, as their screen background, those cooling towers are very much symbolic of very large scale nuclear, which can range anything up to the several gigawatt size. And obviously this has changed over the years. The larger you are in terms of nuclear, the higher the risk, the lower the safety or the ability for containment in case of a fallout. As we saw in the case of Fukushima, Fukushima was not a nuclear accident, it was actually a natural disaster. We just call it a nuclear accident because when the cooling turbines in the diesel gensets were stopped by the seawater, that then caused the cooling to stop, and that then caused this incredibly powerful explosions in the heating of the core reactors. But essentially, we've moved a long way from that point, and a lot of these plants, like the 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl was a nuclear accident. That's very clear, but we must be clear about what was a nuclear accident, what was human causality, and what was a natural disaster. So there are a few different categories, but no doubt, nuclear is a highly volatile and an invisible fuel. We cannot see radiation. So it's to humans, that is in itself a worrying factor. We can't really see carbon dioxide. We can see particulate matter, but we can't see carbon dioxide or methane. So again, with nuclear radioactivity, this is a big issue. What we can't see, we're a little bit scared of. We know it might be there. And certainly in the buildings that we inhabit, there is radiation in the concrete. There is radiation in the steel, but it's so minute that it doesn't have an impact on our lives. More impactful, of course, is microplastics. That's having a much bigger impact on our lives, but we still go on consuming plastic despite the terrible consequences it's having. Next slide, please. So where we've come from, those very large gigawatt size reactors, we're now down to the reactors that are much smaller, using different types of technology, small modular reactors, they're called. Rolls-Royce is rolling out a huge plan to manufacture those container-sized reactors in the UK. These could be anything from 20 megawatts to 500 megawatts. So they're a lot smaller than the typical large-scale nuclear. And clearly this is a different type of setup to the large size. And because of the small size, because of the limited amount of reactive material, the the issues about containment and safety are far reduced. And it's obviously a lot easier to contain a 20 megawatt type of fission reactor than it is for a 2 gigawatt reactor. So companies like Rolls-Royce, they won't put their name on the plate without certainly having done a lot of due diligence, a lot of R&D, and we're seeing these technologies now being slowly rolled out in the UK. Next slide, please. So small modular reactors, micro reactors, propulsion, huge uses in transportation. How do we decarbonize shipping, which represents about 2% of global emissions? 90% of goods are shipped around the world. So how do we deal with, neutralizing or moving those shipping emissions to carbon neutral or net zero? It's very challenging. Bunker fuel has its firm place in the global economy. Singapore is a big bunkering port, same like Rotterdam and other ports in the US and around the world. So clearly this is a potential solution. It reduces particulate matter in the air as well, which of course is the one that's harmful to health. Next slide, please. So we all worry about the supply chain. What do we do with waste? As I say, we don't really think about the same when we come to consuming a Mars bar. We think that when we throw it away, it's gone away. But the reality is that some of that leaks into the environment. It breaks down into microplastics, and it then goes back into our food, into our bloodstream, and into our tissue. Same thing with nuclear. There's the same issues. We have this big concern about disposal. As you may know, the Galileo spacecraft that was orbiting the solar system was powered by nuclear, and that was eventually crashed into Jupiter, which completely incinerated and destroyed it, and all the fuel on board. We think that there's no life on nuclear, on Jupiter, which is why it wasn't crashed onto Europa, where there may be life below the icy crust. So it was a very calculated, careful response. Just as an alien civilization, we wouldn't like to see them crashing their nuclear spacecraft into Earth. They may not know there's life here, but there is indeed. And the same thing for Europa. It may be microbial, but it could be life. So there are disposal methods. And maybe the next slide, we can go on to the supply chain. You can see a little bit here that it's not quite the same as the other supply chains in the energy generation or industrial or transportation sectors. There are a lot of moving parts here. There are a lot of regulatory bodies involved, but still we remain with the same issue about the disposal. There's a huge issue about compliance, and that will be certainly a massive concern for Singapore, regulatory and compliance issues. And I'm not sure how many of you know, but there is a Nuclear Safety Council in Singapore, which is quite interesting. Now that just doesn't deal with medical issues or medical nuclear use. It also deals with general nuclear use, and they do explore the issue of small modular reactors, and that is currently under their purview, is to look at the potential of small modular reactors to operate in Singapore. If the fallout is only, say, 1 to 5 kilometers, that greatly reduces the risk. If the fallout is 150 kilometers, as it was with Chernobyl, then yes, even if you're in Jurong, you can run to Changi Airport, but you're still not out of the fallout zone. So a massive issue for Singapore on the old style reactors, but obviously the small modular reactors start to look at that slightly differently. Next slide. I think we'll focus on the issues of uranium. Now, how many of you remember when we talk about the memorial of Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Uranium was used in Hiroshima, but actually for Nagasaki, a plutonium bomb was used. It was a completely different fuel that was used, or rather a completely different catalyst that was used for the bomb there. In terms of uranium, there are massive resources around the world: Australia, Kazakhstan, the US, Canada, Russia, etc. There are issues about mining uranium, and certainly those do occur in certain environmentally sensitive areas and those with high conservation values. So we have to be aware that the mining of uranium is still a big issue. And next slide is about, I think, plutonium. By country again, you know, Russia's big on plutonium, US. Even Malaysia has a little bit of plutonium in a relatively less dense form in the surface soil. So plutonium occurs in surface soil all around the world, but there's obviously density levels differ amongst different countries, but plutonium can be used as a fuel. What we don't cover here is thorium, and thorium is a less, it's more of an inert fuel, and that can be used as a nuclear fuel. I haven't put it here because there's not a lot of stats on it. It's not greatly used, but it's certainly something the small modular reactors, people like Rolls-Royce are looking at. Next slide, please. So disposal methods, as you can largely see, it's keeping them cool, keeping them buried at the bottom of the ocean in a deep landfill. No, they're not satisfactory, but we landfill a lot of things at the moment. Sanitary landfills occur at the surface of the earth. They in fact rise above the surface, and we then cap those. They should be sanitary. They shouldn't have any seepage, but they occasionally do. Nuclear, again, yes, there can be issues with leakage into the surrounding environment, but generally these landfills for nuclear spent rods are quite secure. And I think the next slide shows a little bit more about the different types of storage and disposal methods. They're really disposal, but I suppose you could say they're storage, because these fuels may find a second life at some point in time with small or micro reactors. Next slide, please. And obviously the costs of nuclear waste recycling is quite significant or material. So that is definitely an issue. And in terms of wet storage, you can see it's quite minimal. The dry storage is more predominant. And of course, repository and waste recycling is more dominant, or are more dominant. And next slide. So clearly there is an argument for carbon, and that's something that my colleagues and I focus on in SV Carbon. YTL-SV Carbon is the footprint, and it's not just your operating footprint, it's your life cycle. And you can see that coal is on the far left at the highest level, and nuclear sits quite far down to the right at a far lower rate, you know, a fraction of that of fossil fuels and natural gas. Of course, natural gas is one of the least emitting fossil fuels, but still it has a significant footprint. Of course, it doesn't go quite down to wind, onshore, offshore, and hydropower. You may, for those of you not familiar with carbon markets or carbon emissions, you'd wonder, why is hydropower has a higher footprint than nuclear or wind and nuclear? And that's because there are emissions such as methane, which are related to the breakdown of organic matter. When you flood a valley, you get this breakdown in organic matter, which then produces methane. And of course, that is a carbon dioxide equivalent gas, which has a global warming potential of around 25 to 28 times that of CO2. But still, the base case for nuclear is there. Next slide. And the countries that, have this as a large proportion of their energy, France obviously way up at the top of the table with almost 70%. Even in the US, you still see them around 20%. In the other countries like Ukraine, as you know, because of Chernobyl and other plants, that is already up in the 55% level. And of course, Russia is still quite high at 20%, along with the United Kingdom, which is still around 15%. So it's still quite predominant, provides a good load of base load power for these economies. Next slide, please. And these are just some of the policies. It's a bit busy, this slide, but some of the policies regarding the use of nuclear. Some of it is steered by public opinion. In Germany, there was a shift recently to retire the nuclear plants, and now they're having a rethink on that. The next slide shows, you can see, we can distribute these slides after the session anyway, I think. You see Taiwan. Taiwan actually had a referendum on nuclear power. And there was a referendum to actually phase out. And the fourth nuclear plant, there was a recent court case where they failed to resume operations or commissioning of that fourth plant. So Taiwan has really taken a bow out of nuclear in a big way, but they do have significant resources in terms of wind power. And also they have a lot of geothermal, but they haven't tapped into that because it's a small island and the geothermal is quite volatile. They sit right on top of a major fault zone. So it is a little bit of a higher risk than saying doing it out in Sambawang. And next slide. And I'm just going to end with two slides. This is the second last one. You can see that this is recently an article in The Economist, and it shows the deaths per terawatt hour of energy produced from different types of fuel. Of course, coal is up there. And, you know, coal is associated with a lot of mining deaths. So it's a very dangerous activity to send people down into, you know, 1 or 2 kilometers below the Earth's surface. And we often see accidents occurring, frequent accidents, in fact, in China, not to single them out, but certainly China has a lot of these accidents simply because they have a lot of coal being extracted. Indonesia, you know, South Kalimantan, mainly that strip mining. So that's harmful for the environment, but there are some fatalities there as well. And of course, oil, a lot of fatalities there because of the high volatility and the way that the rigs are operated. We've seen a number of these accidents occur over the last few years. Surprisingly, hydropower has a level of accidents, but that mainly in the construction phase. And sorry, previous slide. And then when you look at nuclear and solar, it's extremely low. So in terms of fatalities per terawatt hour, and these are all the associated deaths with nuclear and solar, whereas for coal and oil, this is not including the air quality issues. And you'd get a lot of deaths occurring from, especially premature deaths occurring from particulate matter in the air. So this is a massive concern and is not noted here. These are the direct fatalities. And the next slide is my last one, you'll be glad to hear. Now, James Lovelock, I got in touch with him about 2 years ago and we had brief discussion. I was trying to link him up with a client of mine who was interested to have a conversation with him. He just passed away. I think it was yesterday or the day before. But one of the key areas that he focused on was his promotion of nuclear, as he was way before his time, but nuclear as a solution. And he was promoting this many, many years ago. And I think he may have been onto something. As I say, he was before his time because maybe technology and advancements in small modular reactors hadn't occurred then, but he knew it was coming. And, you know, as a tribute to him, I think what we're going to see in terms of his vision is probably going to pan out. But back to Priya and Hanna, because I know they have a few questions, both from previous questions that were sent in and also some questions that were recently received. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ralph. Oh my goodness, you referred to yourself as a dinosaur at the start, but I think I really beg to differ. With that status comes a wealth of experience, and you setting the scene with facts, figures. I think it was really informative and it provided a lot of context for the people on the call here. And I just have to add that since we got in touch in you know, brainstorming for today's session, my learning curve for this topic has just went up, and I'm just so happy that the alumni on the call today got to download all that information from you, and fret not, we'll be sharing the slides after this. And so we decided to weave in the interactive element right into the middle of the session for today. And for this, Hanna will be taking the lead on it, and she'll be sharing the screen from her end.
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is just also to kind of shake up things so that you guys don't have to like constantly hear us present. Of course, not saying at all that Ralph's presentation was boring at all. I really enjoyed it. I hope you guys did as well. That was really informative. Okay, let me share my screen. So what we were thinking of doing now is to kind of, I guess during Ralph's presentation, you were having a lot of thoughts and feelings about about nuclear energy, and that you might have had some previous feelings about it before. Exactly. Thank you for already putting in a word. So what we'd like you to do is, yes, go in the chat, and City has put in a link for Poll Everywhere, where you don't have to put in a name or anything when you go to the link. You can also go anonymously, it doesn't matter. And then just put in as many words as possible that you personally feel connect to the word nuclear. So we'll let you do that for a few minutes. And over time, we will get to see a conglomeration of the powerful minds of UWC alumni. There we go. Awe-inspiring, radiation, dangerous. Many people feel it's dangerous. So the larger the word, the more often it comes up. Weapon, we have in the chat as well. Multi-purpose, yeah, sometimes because it separates separate words. So I'm guessing the multi-purpose comes together. Great. And you guys are also welcome to, if you have any comments or questions right now to Ralph or anyone, please unmute yourself or put it in the chat or anything, raise your hand. Okay, this is great. This is putting words into art form. Potential, Japan, accidents, volatile. Stigma, optimistic, insightful. We got a good variety of words here. Even though we're only a few people. Oh yeah, please also alumni team, please also add your words if you haven't already. Insightful.
It seems like dangerous is coming up multiple times, as well as explosive. I feel like I want to make a word poem.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, exactly. Like now I feel like we're putting together science and art again, just like your poems, Priya. I will definitely save this once we've finished. Once I see things slowing down a bit, I can save the word cloud, and then we can share it later together with the Ralph's presentation.
Sounds like a good plan.
Great. All right. Okay. Yeah. So we've got everything from controversial, multi-purpose, radiation, dangerous. Now dangerous isn't the main thing, but controversial definitely. And I feel like that kind of definitely sums up our the feelings about nuclear energy. So I think with that, we could probably continue. I will stop sharing and freeze this poll. Okay.
Okay, hang on. Slideshow. Okay.
Okay, great. We have also a question from Ethan Locke. Let me see. Yeah, we can address this first, perhaps. We also, so what we're going to do now as well is, before we move on to Sri Priya, is we also asked all of you when you were signing up for this event if you had any questions regarding this topic in general, or yeah, specifically to any of the speakers. So I guess we can start with Ethan Locke in the chat first. How do we approach financing the transition towards nuclear energy as a more predominant energy source? That's a good question. And I think that kind of connects with another question we have later, but yeah, we can maybe start answering. Ralph, do you want to start? With
just a quick one on that. amazingly, the European Union recently has allowed the use of sustainable finance or green bonds to be used for nuclear investment. So it's a major shift in, so nuclear is not a renewable energy, but is certainly considered now a sustainable energy. So because obviously the fuels like uranium, plutonium, and thorium are not renewable, but certainly sustainable in terms of what we saw in that carbon footprint. So that shift by the European Union was a significant one, and I think that points towards maybe a groundswell in the sort of available finance or market mechanisms to allow the adoption of nuclear.
For sure, and I think that like a lot of the reason why perhaps nuclear has not been adopted as so far is because the price of fossil fuels was just so low. But now with the crisis faced because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, I think that like the energy insecurity that's kind of driving oil prices up. So that means that like nuclear becomes a more viable option. And Ralph, as you were saying, in Europe, as it's supported with bonds, I think that basically governmental policies which kind of encourage the adoption, finance the research into like small modular reactors, as well as even education programs that kind of help people feel that it's not dangerous to have a nuclear reactor in your backyard, but rather advantageous. That kind of education will also go towards this, I think.
Agree. I guess we can move on to the next question that we also have from Yunwei Hao from class of 2001. So I think it's kind of related to what we were just saying. What are the main impediments to implementation of nuclear power in different countries, and how can these be overcome? Yeah, again, like you guys were saying, I feel like, so for example, in Germany, where I have been living for a long time, there was such a opposition towards nuclear energy in the past decade and a half or so. Like during Angela Merkel's time, they decided, oh no, after Fukushima, we're going to close down all the nuclear reactors because we thought it was too unsafe. But honestly, yeah, like Ralph mentioned, I mean, okay, Fukushima was a natural disaster caused disaster. And I feel like, you have to really be, well, first of all, how do we overcome the impediments? Well, like you say, the general education, we just need to inform people more about nuclear energy. What is the actual safety concern, and how can we improve that? And also, I was going to say with Japan and Germany, for example, I mean, Japan, many locations are at risk of earthquakes and tsunamis and things like that. But I don't feel, like in Germany, we don't really have that risk as much. So you have to really consider the context. And like Ralph, we were saying one time during one of our discussions, the whole how to approach energy and just becoming more sustainable. It requires many parts. Not all of us can go full solar or full wind or anything. You have to really create a modular combination for each situation.
Yeah, good points, Hanna. I think the political sensitivity of nuclear is a major issue. But when we look at the footprint, and you look at all these solar projects, I have nothing against solar. I think, solar is an excellent solution, but it's only 19% efficiency. And imagine the waste in 20, 25 years' time we're going to have to deal with. Solar panels are, to a certain extent, recyclable. Wind turbine blades, they've created a huge issue in UK and around Europe. They're now landfilling these blades, which are 100 meters long. Clearly, whatever you do, there's going to be a certain amount of waste. Question is how much we can tolerate and deal with. So I think it's moving public perception, and that's going to be done, as you say, through awareness and advocacy and proper information about, nuclear versus the whole life cycle. it's not just about radiation. It's not just about safety.
Absolutely. Circular economy. Yeah. Looking at every part of the life cycle of a product. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree that, the energy solution that we come up with is going to be different in different parts of the world, and it's really great as Ralph and as you were saying, Hannah, to take a holistic look at it, not just kind of like how much power, say, a solar panel is producing, but also all the emissions that occur while you're forming a solar panel to be deployed, and all the things you need to consider when you have to dispose of it after it's that had its time in the sun, so to speak. So I think that it's really great to keep all these things in mind and to understand that the solution might look different in different parts of the world, and also that the solution might look different at different periods in a country's evolution as well. So with that, perhaps we can advance to the thought on fusion. So far, what we've been focused on is kind of like nuclear fission, and there's a lot of great information that Ralph provided to us regarding that. But one of the other holy grails, at least for the scientific community, has been the nuclear fusion option. So basically, what is fusion? Fusion is what powers our sun effectively. It's like when you have a nuclear reaction where two lighter nuclei come together and fuse to form a heavier nuclei with the release of a neutron and a lot of energy, 14.1 mega electron volts. So why is this so attractive? It's attractive because if you are able to achieve nuclear fusion, you can release enormous amounts of energy. And the way that it happens in the stars, it's through the confinement of plasma with gravitational force. And also on Earth, some adventurous people have been trying to recreate it, for example, in Berkeley, in the National Ignition Facility. So in this case, they provide like enormous amounts of energy to a small volume by shooting high power lasers at like a small volume of material. So even though like it could present an attractive option, the issue that we have currently is that it requires enormous input power and very complex reactors, and right now it's not been scalable, but there's been a lot of money put in by governments all over the world to try and get this going. The other reason why it's like very attractive is that you can find some of the precursor elements in seawater. And if you're interested to find out more, I would encourage you to like take a look at some of the articles and videos we've been posting in the Connect in order to learn a little bit more about that. That brings us to our next question. So, which is, we saw even in the word cloud that like nuclear energy can often be perceived as dangerous. And oftentimes when people say nuclear, the first thing you think is of fission and like perhaps even weapons. But there's a lot of work and research going on in fusion. So for example, how would one go about educating the public about the benefits while also acknowledging the drawbacks? So feel free to like come off mute and share your thoughts before we proceed to the most controversial topic of all in a few slides. So if folks could share their thoughts, come off mute, drop your thoughts in the chat window, whichever works best for you.
To get the ball rolling, one of my favorite politicians of all time is Margaret Thatcher. She was an engineer, and she understood the science. She understood, the importance of both climate change, of carbon footprint. This is way back in the 80s, and I'm wondering, Singapore's got great politicians. Do we need them to be more expressive in countries? Malaysia, I think Mahathir very early on in Malaysia talked about, saying nuclear was just not on the table. Do we need politicians to change their stance, and to educate themselves on, what does this mean? What's the narrative? How do we start talking about nuclear as a solution rather than as a dangerous proposition?
Thank you, Ralph.
It's also
Insightful
relates
as
to
always.
Ethan's question that he dropped in the message. He also wants to know how companies can learn more about nuclear energy. So it's not just how to educate individuals, it's how business can learn more about this as well as it impact their the things that they're doing in their sectors.
Yeah, that's a good question, Ethan. There are a few companies around. Terra Power was invested by Bill Gates, and they've got a joint venture with another company called Core Power, who have a Singaporean investor. And these companies are happy to talk. They want to engage, not on just propulsion technology, but also on baseload power technology. They're talking about offshore nuclear production in terms of the power production being conducted offshore, either for baseload power to places like Singapore, or for even producing, say, pink hydrogen. So there's actually a lot of companies in this space, and probably they're the ones who we should be engaging with, and getting them to come into calls where we can maybe get them to talk, instead of shunning nuclear as a taboo topic, and that's the way it's treated in these sustainability events. Bring it into the conversation. Let's learn about it. Let's not be ignorant, but let's bring these. So if any of you are out there in the the ESG space, like I am with my colleagues, we just don't see nuclear being talked about, and I think that's a big problem. And Tina, you're quite right. We need to bring these companies into the conversation. Otherwise, we're just going to be ignorance, and it's going to be bliss, because what we don't know is not going to affect what we do.
For sure. I think, Ralph, that's like a really good point. And Tina, thank you for bringing it up, because, I think that we need education at all levels, and the willpower from companies, from governments, from individuals, in order to kind of make use of what could be a very good option for the climate and for the earth, but that because of like all the associations, and rightfully so, because of the accidents and the fear surrounding it, is still very much a controversial and perceived as dangerous technology. But by thinking about it, and by like presenting the facts, by having these kind of discussions, then maybe we can consider adopting nuclear into the mix. So it would be good perhaps now to address the role of nuclear power in war and peace. So very close to now, we're coming up on the anniversary of the day that the atomic bomb fell on Hiroshima, August 6, 1945. And on the left-hand side, you see an image of the Hiroshima Peace Memorial. And that's my niece and nephew in front of it right there. And so, we really want to keep our children safe. We want to, be able to use power in a very considered way. And so several times since 1952, the world has gone to the brink of war because of nuclear armaments. And so several of the threats to like global peace have been due to nuclear armaments as well. So in that sense, given that nuclear power can also be used to form weapons, what can we do to kind of decouple the two? because right now in the popular imagination as well as in technology development, both are kind of interwoven or interlinked. So perhaps we can advance to the next slide. And look at one of the questions from our alumnus, Carl Meyer, which kind of outlines the narrative tension here very well. So right now we are in the throes of a climate crisis, and the greatest danger to humanity is still perceived as a nuclear war. So because certain opinion makers have stated that military and civilian use of nuclear technology are inseparable, he poses the question, is that even true? So how can you advance nuclear energy production without getting that tied in with nuclear weapons proliferation and armament? How do you tie that instead to non-proliferation and disarmament? So what do you think? What is the role of nuclear in war and in peace?
So, Priya, just to, maybe we can use the analogy, of chemical production. So we see a lot of chemicals being produced, which are, byproducts are being used in our everyday life. And chemical weapons have been used extensively in conflict. Yet we don't outlaw the use of chemical production or manufacturing. So I think we have to recognize that it's the jurisdictions or the countries that basically have control of these technologies that are ones who have to be coerced and convinced to join these global pacts, and we have to. I think it's very challenging. You've got very much East versus West and a Cold War mentality right now, but you must recognize that chemical weaponry is equally dangerous, and those impacts can last for years. So maybe we should think about it in that sense. We can't just outlaw a particular type of fuel simply because it's misused in certain circumstances.
That is true. And as you were saying that, it brought to mind lithium batteries because they're ubiquitous. But at the same time, if it's taken into airplane or even in cars, sometimes like anything where you have a lot of energy locked into that, it can cause explosion. So there's always that fine balance when you have something that produces energy of being able to manage it and release that energy in a way that is good for energy production but doesn't cause any harm.
I think media plays a big part in this. Every time we hear nuclear war, nuclear bomb, or who's producing nuclear weapons, you turn and listen to it. So I think media does influence people's perception a lot. And Ethan, let us know, do you guys talk about nuclear energy in your classrooms, in education? Are we talking about it enough? Or are we learning? I didn't know anything about nuclear energy an hour ago. I'm new to this topic now. As a student, are you guys learning that in the classroom?
I think within certain classes we are. I think UWC in general has quite a big emphasis on the sustainable energy side of things. But specifically within nuclear energy, I think you're right in terms of the media playing an influence on our general perceptions of it. I mean, even with the education I have, I wasn't aware with all these small nuances and all these small things to do with nuclear energy. So I think it is definitely a topic that could be explored deeper within schools. And I think there's not misinformation out there about it, but perhaps people have the wrong perception about the topic in general. So I think it could be explored slightly deeper within school systems.
All right, we're closing down really quickly to the end of the hour. I think if we could go on, there's just a million to one, subtopics just within this nuclear energy and trying to diversify our energy mix. With that, it brings us to the end of today's session. We don't want to end it off abruptly like this. Like the conversation, it can still continue and pick up the momentum from today. The right place to do this, like if I cannot reiterate this further, the Alumni in Sustainability group on UWCSEA Connect, join onto that group and post your questions. Like Priya, Hanna, Ralph, all of them are on that. You can tag your question. If there's any topics that maybe that was mentioned very briefly by any of our alumni speakers today and you wanted them to explore into maybe a spin-off from today's session, we'll be happy to put some thought into it and carving it out for the next one. But meanwhile, the speakers have shared really that all the articles that was linked on this slide is already been shared on the platform in that group. So if you want to further your reading and get more insights, join the group and help yourself to these articles. And yeah, I guess I'll just stop my share right now. And any other last comments, questions you have for Priya, Hanna, and Ralph especially? Thank you so much for sharing your time and your effort into the slides for today. They were really in-depth and they were, I think, really helped to set the scene for me as well, like going from 0 to 100. It was very knowledgeable. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Ray.
Thank
Good to
you.
see
I
you
just
all.
joined the sustainability group.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's what we like to hear. And I learned so much as well over
you
the
so
course
much
of the
for
past
making.
couple of weeks. And it's been good to think deeply about a topic that has so many different facets.
absolutely. And I think like what we were saying is that the pendulum for like acceptance of nuclear energy, it was positive first among environmentalists, then it was swung to negative, and now we're kind of seeing where it goes again after this. And yeah, thank you so much, Ralph, again for leading this this session on nuclear energy.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for your input. Excellent.
And today's session will be recorded and shared. So thank you again, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.